Crestwood Pines had rules. Rules about lawn length. Rules about trash can placement. Rules about holiday decorations. Pet noise levels. Mailbox paint and curtain colours. And at the top of the pyramid of petty power stood Martha Langley, HOA, president for the past 8 years, and self-proclaimed guardian of neighbourhood standards. Martha didn't just enforce the rules, she lived for them. Each morning, she walked the sidewalks in a pastel pantsuit, clipboard in hand, inspecting homes like a drill sergeant at parade. She had a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a voice that could slice concrete. People avoided her gaze. Everyone had received one of her letters at some point. Then came Elias Monroe. It started with the sound of tires crunching the gravel of Lot 12. A weathered truck, at least 20 years old, rumbled into the driveway. It was towing a small trailer, dented and rust-streaked, piled high with personal items. A rocking chair, a rolled-up rug, a cracked wooden birdhouse, a large black dog, part wolf by the looks of it, lay sprawled in the truck bed, panting. Elias stepped out slowly. Tall, lean, with thick silver hair and skin like sun-aged leather. He wore jeans and a canvas jacket despite the heat. He glanced at the manicured homes flanking his new one and smiled faintly, as if amused by a private joke. Martha noticed immediately. Lot 12 had been a curiosity for years. It sat near the back of the neighbourhood, shaded by massive oak trees, and unlike every other lot, it had never been sold by Crestwood Pines Development Company. The house on it was old, really old, its wood siding faded and porch slightly uneven. Developers said it was owned by a private entity and would be sold in time. No one expected someone to just show up. At the emergency HOA meeting that evening, Martha addressed the board. This newcomer, Mr. Monroe, did not go through proper HOA onboarding. He did not submit a residency application, architectural compliance form, or landscaping intent letter. And there's a dog, a large, unapproved breed. She passed around photos she had taken from her car window. The dog was lounging in the sun, while Elias carried boxes. There was a wind chime already hanging from the porch. And worst of all, a handmade welcome sign, staked crookedly in the yard. Unacceptable, she snapped. We set standards here. If one person ignores the rules, others will follow. This anarchy cannot stand. Board member Jeremy Clark raised a hesitant hand. Wasn't Lot 12 always kind of exempt? I thought it was private land. Martha fixed him with a glare. No one is exempt in Crestwood Pines. We've managed this community for years. We've built something beautiful. I don't care how he got in. We will make sure he follows the rules. The next morning, Elias found a typed letter taped to his front door. Subject: HOA violation warning. Non-compliance with welcome protocols. It was signed in blocky cursive. Martha Langley, President, Crestwood Pines. HOA. Elias read it slowly, then folded it in half and slid it into his coat pocket. He walked back inside without a word. Later that day, he hung another wind chime. That night, Martha fumed from her kitchen window, watching the lights flicker on in the forbidden house. She didn't know it yet, but her kingdom had just welcomed a man who didn't believe in queens, and the ground beneath her empire had just begun to shift. Martha Langley wasn't used to being ignored, especially not by someone like Elias Monroe, an outsider with no respect for protocol. She had sent the first warning letter expecting immediate compliance, or at the very least, a groveling phone call. But there was no reply, no phone call, no email, no visit to her office in the community clubhouse. Just silence, and another wind chime. By the third day, he had installed a second-hand porch swing, repainted his shutters teal blue, and placed an old iron bird bath in his front yard, none of which had been approved by the HOA Architectural Review Committee. Martha watched each violation unfold like a horror movie. "He's mocking us," she hissed to the board during their weekly meeting. Jeremy, her deputy, shifted in his seat. "It's just some paint and garden stuff. Maybe he doesn't know the rules yet." Martha slapped the table. "He knows. I gave him the binder. 42 pages of community standards. Hand-delivered." He smiled at me like I'd brought him cookies. The other members murmured uncertainly. Elias was becoming something of a fascination in Crestwood Pines. Kids whispered stories about the old man with the wolf dog. Some of the older residents admired his independence. Others just wanted to know how he was getting away with it. The end of the week, Martha had issued 6 formal citations. Elias hadn't responded to a single one. Instead, he built a small raised garden bed beside his porch, where herbs now flourished in neat rows. Basil, sage, rosemary. That was a code. Violation 2. Visible edible plants were strictly prohibited from front-facing yards. Martha printed a 7th citation, and then he waved. He waved at her. As she drove by, clutching a stack of enforcement letters, Elias looked up from his weeding, smiled like the sun was warming his bones, and gave her a casual lazy wave, like neighbors used to do 50 years ago. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't apology. It was worse. It was peace. "What kind of game is this?" Martha muttered later, pacing her kitchen, still holding the citation she couldn't bring herself to deliver. Why isn't he reacting? That night, Jeremy drove by Elias's house. Something compelled him. Not quite fear, but a tingling. Curiosity. There was an ease about Elias that didn't fit Crestwood's suffocating formality. His home glowed with amber light. He sat in the porch swing, sipping tea, a lantern glowing beside him. The dog lay nearby, eyes half closed. On the porch table, old papers fluttered in the breeze, yellowed, stamped, hand-signed documents that looked far older than the neighborhood itself. Jeremy slowed his car. Elias turned, met his eyes, and nodded once. Not a challenge, not a threat, just acknowledgement. Jeremy drove on, heart racing for reasons he couldn't name. Back at the clubhouse, the next day, Martha plotted her next move. "If he won't respond to letters," she declared, "we escalate, surprise inspections, fines, block community services." "Can we actually do that?" Jeremy asked. "Without proof he's under our jurisdiction." "We don't need proof." Martha snapped. "We have precedent. This is our neighborhood. We make the rules." No one spoke after that. The silence felt heavier than usual. That afternoon, Elias received a final notice taped to his trash bin. The HOA had suspended his community privileges. Trash pickup, water access, pool entry, all revoked. Elias read it, folded it, then walked back inside, and turned on the sprinklers. By week 2, Elias Monroe was no longer just a nuisance. He was an open rebellion. The HOA had pulled out all the stops. Water service to his home was throttled under the guise of maintenance. His trash bin mysteriously disappeared. A code enforcement officer from the county, one of Martha's old poker buddies, left a citation on his windshield for parking too close to the curb. Still, Elias didn't blink. He filled a rain barrel and watered his garden by hand. He burned leaves in a steel drum, waved at passing neighbors, and let his dog roam leashless on his own lawn. Every move felt slow and deliberate, like someone playing a long, careful game of chess. And always that faint smile. Martha was unraveling. "This is a challenge," she growled to her board. "He's testing us. We need to reassert control." The boardroom at the Crestwood Pines clubhouse had never felt so tense. Jeremy, sitting near the back, felt like he was watching a wildfire burn through dry brush. Each day that passed, more neighbors quietly voiced their admiration for Elias. Some even copied him. One house painted its door a bright yellow. Another started growing tomatoes in the front yard. He's not just ignoring the rules, Martha snapped. He's infecting the neighborhood. That night, Jeremy couldn't sleep. There was something about Elias. Something uncanny. The man was too calm, too patient. His movements didn't just defy the HOA. They unsettled it. Jeremy decided to go looking for answers. At the county archives, he dug into property deeds, zoning maps, development records. Then he found something that made him stop breathing. Lot 12 was not part of Crestwood Pines. It had never been purchased by the developers. It sat on a separate legal parcel, an original land grant from the 1930s, transferred through private inheritance. Every map, every document Jeremy unearthed confirmed it. Lot 12 wasn't governed by the HOA. It never had been, which meant Elias was well within his rights. Every letter, every fine, every attempt at punishment, they were meaningless. Worse, they were illegal. Jeremy drove straight to Elias's house. He didn't know what he was going to say, but he had to say something. He parked quietly and stepped out. The night air was cool and still. Elias was on the porch again, as if he had been waiting. A small oil lamp flickered on the table beside him, casting strange shadows over thick rolls of paper. Maps, deeds, surveys. I found the records. Jeremy began, hesitant. Elias looked up. His eyes were sharp and kind all at once. I know, Elias said calmly. You're not the first to notice, but you're the first to ask. Jeremy stepped forward, glancing at the yellowed parchment. The top page read, Property of E. Monroe, established 1931, private, non-transferable without consent. You've known all along, Jeremy whispered. Elias leaned back in the swing, the old chains creaking softly. Of course I have. The question is, why didn't they know? Jeremy had no answer. Behind them, Crestwood Pines slept. Quiet, perfect, ignorant, but under its foundation, something had shifted. Elias tapped the old deed and added, You might want to check which lots the HOA was built on. Mine isn't the only one they never actually owned. Then he smiled again, that same faint smile, and gestured to the extra chair beside him. Jeremy sat. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't inside the neighborhood anymore. He was inside the truth. Martha Langley prided herself on her memory. She remembered who first proposed the mailbox color rule. Carol Weaver, 2014. Which homeowner replaced a garage door without approval? The McLeans, 2019. And even the exact date the HOA bylaws were last updated, March 17th, 2021. But she didn't. Remember, Lot 12. She never had. It wasn't on any of the board's maps. It had no listed HOA dues, no record of covenant compliance, no design review submissions, and, most damningly, no welcome package ever filed. Martha blamed clerical error. Jeremy, on the other hand, blamed something else. I think we were never supposed to have it, he told her flatly. They were sitting in the HOA office, surrounded by file cabinets and neatly color-coded folders. Jeremy dropped a stack of photocopied land records onto the table with a thud. Lot 12 doesn't belong to us, not even a little. It was carved out of the original acreage in the 30s. The Monroes have had it ever since. The developers built around it but never bought it. They couldn't. Martha stared at him, not understanding or refusing to. So what? Some overlooked, Paperwork. We'll just annex it properly now. Retroactive enforcement. Easy. Jeremy shook his head slowly. You can't annex private property that was never zoned for community governance. Not without a formal acquisition. And his family's deed predates our HOA charter by 50 years. Martha's jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. Everything in this neighborhood is ours. I've been running it for nearly a decade. Jeremy gave her a long look. That's what scares me. While Martha stewed in denial, Jeremy returned to Elias's porch the next evening. The man was already waiting, tea in hand, a stack of documents beside him. There was something magnetic about the porch, like it was a different realm entirely, untouched by the HOA's grip. This neighborhood, Elias said quietly, was built on stories, paper stories, filed, copied, reshuffled. But Lot 12 is real. It was never sold, never leased, never auctioned. My father made sure of it. He said, "Don't let the land get eaten by paper." I didn't understand that until I saw the rules. You folks started writing. Jeremy sat down again, stunned. But why now? Why move in after all these years? Elias's eyes twinkled with something unreadable. Because I got tired of watching people live like prisoners in houses they think they own. The fences kept getting taller, the rules tighter. No wind chimes, no tomatoes, no freedom. That isn't a neighborhood, it's a zoo. From inside the house, the old dog stirred. And what about the rest of the land? Jeremy asked, half fearing. The answer. Elias looked off into the trees. My father didn't just own this plot. He owned part of the surrounding land too. Leased quietly, generation to generation. Some of it, your HOA claimed without legal transfer. I let it be. Until they started acting like kings. Jeremy's breath caught. How much land? Elias smiled gently. Enough to matter. The next day, Jeremy quietly pulled up the HOA's foundational maps. His hands shook as he overlaid the Monroe deed outlines. He counted 6 properties, 6 entire homes, built on land the HOA had no right to govern. It wasn't just a fluke. It was a bomb, and Martha was standing right on top of it. Martha Langley stormed into the Crestwood Pines legal counsel's office with a fire in her eyes and a folder full of what she still insisted were irrefutable violations. She slapped the documents onto the conference table, lips pressed thin. I want an injunction filed by Friday, she demanded. This man is mocking the HOA, ignoring direct orders, and disrupting community harmony. Across from her, HOA attorney Brent Halverston adjusted his glasses and skimmed the paperwork, his brow furrowed deeper with each page, until he stopped, altogether at the deed Jeremy had included, the one from Elias's family. Martha, Brent began slowly. Do you realize what this document is? A distraction, she snapped. That man's trying to weasel out of jurisdiction. I don't care what his grandfather scribbled on parchment paper. This is 2025. We have rules. Brent folded his hands. No, this is binding. This is a registered land deed, filed with the county in 1931. Not only is Elias not under your HOA's authority, but 6 other properties adjacent to his may not be either. If this goes to court, it won't end well. For anyone. Martha froze. For the first time in weeks, she didn't speak. 2 days later, it did go to court. The courtroom buzzed with tension as reporters, homeowners, and HOA board members squeezed onto benches. The case of Monroe versus Crestwood Pines HOA wasn't just a local dispute. It had become a full-blown legal event. Neighborhood gossip gave way to social media posts. A single man was taking on an entire HOA and winning hearts in the process. Elias sat calmly, wearing the same denim jacket and canvas Hattie always wore. Beside him, a composed young attorney named Renee Langford flipped through her binder, filled with easement laws, historical land use precedents, and statements from longtime residents. Martha sat with clenched fists and a forced smile, flanked by her board and Brent, who now looked mildly ill. Renee spoke first. Your Honour, my client is the legal and rightful owner of Lot 12, Crestwood Region, granted via deed dated 1931, and unbroken through 3 generations. This land was never sold to, nor governed by, Crestwood Pines Development Company. Furthermore, I submit into evidence overlapping deeds, proving multiple adjacent homes were improperly annexed without legal transfer. A low murmur rippled through the room. The judge, an aging man with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, studied the documents in silence. Then he looked up. Miss Langford, are you asserting that the HOA has been enforcing rules on private land for over a decade without legal authority? Yes, Your Honour. And issuing fines, suspending services, and harassing my client in violation of property rights. Martha leapt to her feet. Your Honour, if we let one man defy the community structure, sit down, the judge said without looking at her. A beat of silence. Then, in a firm voice, he continued, This case is not about community spirit, it's about legal boundaries. The court recognises that Mr. Monroe's property lies outside the HOA's governance. Furthermore, I am issuing a stay on all HOA actions related to the neighbouring properties until further review. Mr. Monroe is free to maintain his land as he sees fit. The gavel cracked. Martha didn't even flinch, but she didn't breathe either. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Elias. He declined interviews, waved once, and walked to his truck. The dog, still majestic and calm, leapt into the back, with practiced ease. As Elias pulled away, Jeremy stood at the curb, watching in awe. The king had been dethroned, but the kingdom hadn't realized it yet. The courthouse ruling spread through Crestwood Pines like wildfire. By morning, whispers replaced hushed compliance. Neighbours who once nodded fearfully at Martha's passing now smiled with newfound confidence. The streets, once so eerily uniform, began to blossom with colours, life, and quiet defiance. On Redfern Lane, the epicentre of Martha's power, something unexpected was happening. The Nelsons painted their front door bright red, the exact shade Elias had used on his shutters. The Petersons planted sunflowers in their front garden. Despite the HOA's previous ban on excessive flora, children scrawled chalk drawings on the sidewalks. No longer worried about reprimands. At the weekly HOA meeting, the tension was palpable. Martha arrived to find half the board missing. The chairs meant for the most loyal members sat empty. Those who remained whispered behind clenched jaws. Martha's voice cut through the room. This is chaos. The neighbourhood is falling apart because we refuse to enforce the rules. Jeremy, standing at the back, raised a hand. Maybe the rules were the problem. Excuse me. Martha's glare could have sliced steel. The people want freedom, Jeremy said, quietly but firmly. Elias showed them, there's life outside your rules. Real life. Maybe it's time we listen. A murmur of agreement rose. Martha shook her head. I won't let this neighbourhood turn into a free-for-all. We are here to protect property values, community safety, and standards. From the back, a voice interrupted. Maybe you were protecting your control. Heads turned to see Linda Myers, a homeowner who had been silent for years. Martha, we used to be neighbours. Now we're prisoners of rules, written without our consent. Elias didn't start this revolution. You did. Martha's mouth opened, but no words came. Outside, the neighborhood was alive with quiet acts of rebellion. Elias's dog barked joyfully as children played in the street. Garden gnomes popped up overnight in yards Martha had once deemed unsightly. Wind chimes tinkled in breezes like a secret melody. At her home, Martha sat alone in the dark, scrolling through messages on her phone, emails, texts, calls from homeowners expressing frustration, asking questions, demanding change. Her empire was crumbling. Then came the letter. No return address, no signature, just a single line written in elegant cursive. The land remembers. So should you. Martha's hands trembled. As she read it, she knew the message was from Elias, because only someone who understood the land's true history could send it. Martha sat in the dim glow of her study lamp, the mysterious letter resting on the polished oak desk. The land remembers. So should you. The words echoed in her mind, stirring a restless unease she hadn't felt in years. Her grip tightened around the envelope. Elias wasn't just a thorn in her side anymore. He was a specter, haunting her every decision. The HOA was unraveling faster than she could contain. At every meeting, fewer faces met her gaze. Homeowners openly questioned the rules she fought to uphold. Jeremy's quiet dissent had morphed into a steady stream of opposition. The board was fractured. She'd built her power on order, predictability, control. Now, chaos whispered on every street corner. And the land itself seemed to mock her. A knock at the door startled her. Jeremy entered, holding a worn folder. "Martha, I found something." She motioned for him to sit. He opened the folder, revealing yellowed pages, handwritten letters, old survey maps, and faded photographs. "This is from the county archives. Your predecessors knew about the Monroe deed. They deliberately excluded it when forming the HOA boundaries." Martha's eyes narrowed. Why? Because owning Lot 12 meant losing control. They feared a single holdout could unravel their plans. They hoped no one would notice. The weight of decades-old secrets pressed down on her. Martha's voice was low, brittle. "And Elias? Was he always meant to be the thorn in our side?" Jeremy shook his head. He just remembered. And now the rest of the neighborhood is waking up. Outside, twilight deepened. Martha glanced toward the window, where shadows danced. Across manicured lawns, suddenly alive with rebellion. Colorful doors, wild gardens, laughter. The breaking point had arrived. The following morning, a rally formed at the community center. Homeowners gathered, energized, and emboldened. Elias stood quietly at the edge, the dog sitting faithfully at his feet. Jeremy addressed the crowd, urging collaboration and change. Martha arrived late, flanked by a handful of loyalists. The room fell silent. "Enough," she began, voice steady, but tinged with desperation. "We need order. Rules keep this community safe." A murmur rose in response. A sharp voice cut through the tension. Linda Myers, standing tall. "Martha, safety isn't control. We want respect, freedom, to live without fear of arbitrary fines." The room erupted in applause. Martha's gaze locked on Elias. "This land, it belongs to you, doesn't it?" Elias nodded slowly. "It belongs to those who respect it. Those who live in it, not control it." Martha felt the last of her defenses crumble. She took a deep breath. Then, "What happens now?" Elias stepped forward, extending a hand not of conquest, but of peace. "We rebuild, together, not with rules that suffocate, but with respect that unites." The crowd cheered. Martha hesitated, then reached out, grasping his hand. In that moment, the old order died, and a new community was born. The sun rose over Crestwood Pines, casting golden light on a neighborhood transformed. The wildflowers bloomed, lay freely in yards, once stripped bare by HOA decrees. Doors glowed in vibrant colors. Laughter echoed through the streets, and the air smelled of fresh earth and new beginnings. Elias stood on his porch, the old oil lamp beside him, now replaced by morning light. Jeremy joined him quietly, watching the peaceful scene. "You think it will last?" Jeremy asked. Elias smiled softly. "It has to." As neighbors mingled, sharing stories and plans, a subtle energy hummed beneath the surface, an ancient pulse that had been waiting all along. Later that afternoon, Martha returned to her home with a heavy heart but a tentative hope. In her mailbox lay another letter, this one embossed with a faded seal, an unfamiliar crest intertwined with roots and stars. She broke the seal and unfolded the parchment inside. It read, "To those who forget the land's truth, it will remind you the Monroe legacy is more than property. It is stewardship, respect, and the promise that this earth will endure beyond power and paper. The land remembers those who honor it, and it holds secrets waiting for the patient. Look beneath, listen closer. You will find the roots of the past and the seeds of the future." Confused but compelled, Martha went to the edge of her backyard, where a large oak tree stood, ancient and proud. At its base, the earth was unusually soft. With trembling hands, she dug, slowly, carefully, until her fingers brushed against something solid. An iron box, corroded with age. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, lay a bundle of documents, hand-drawn maps, old journals, and a faded photograph of a man, her great-grandfather, standing beside Elias's grandfather, shaking hands. The journal entries revealed a pact between the families, a vow to protect the land from exploitation. The original developers had tried to override the agreement, but the land itself had been their silent guardian. Martha sat back, tears filling her eyes. The power struggles, the fights, the divisions. They were shadows cast over a deeper truth. She understood now. This neighborhood was never about control. It was about connection. That evening, at a community gathering beneath the great oak, Martha stood before the crowd. "Today, I learned that the land holds memories of promises, respect, and unity. We can't govern a neighborhood by fear or rules alone. We must honor the past, listen to the earth beneath our feet, and build a future together." Elias stepped beside her, nodding. The dog barked once, joyfully, as if approving. The crowd erupted, in cheers, as stars began to glitter overhead. A gentle wind rustled through the leaves, and for the first time in decades, Crestwood Pines felt truly alive. Because the land remembers, and so would they.